Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo, and hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, your home in the sports card world for vintage baseball and talking about vintage stuff. I'm your host, Mike Moynihan, this week, every week. And yeah, I took a week off. I hope people aren't terribly disappointed. I spent Thanksgiving week. My brother came in town for the first time in like 2 years because of COVID. And so getting to see him and his wife and my nieces and nephews, I just wanted to take some time to do that. So here we are back though. And today I've got an interesting episode because I've been friends with this guy for a couple of years now, and I'm just going to bring him on and we'll start talking to him and talk through our topic of the day, which is buying vintage collections and what you should look for and what you should think about and all those things. Ty Wilson, Bench Clear Media, my compatriarch, whatever word I want to use. What's up, Ty?
You must be desperate if you're asking me to come on a vintage show. Have you already run out of guests? What's going on?
No, I think you're doing some cool stuff, and I thought it'd be a great idea for an episode. Welcome to Golden Age, the number one rated podcast in the Bench Clear Media family.
By Julie, yes.
By viewers like you. No.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Glad you're here. It's an interesting time we're living in. You know, the sports card market's gone nuts the last few years, as we're both well aware. You were predominantly, just some background, a modern guy. I'd like you to talk first about how you've gone from being a significantly modernly focused guy in sports cards to gravitating a little bit more, and what value do you see in vintage, and what are you finding out there?
Yeah, I would say obviously collected modern a lot, broke hundreds and hundreds of cases, maybe not the Britton Becca level, but a lot of cases, and graded lots of cards. I think initially probably 2 years ago, right along the time you and I started hanging, I think I just got frustrated with the new people coming in and that type of audience gravitating towards modern cards. And I don't think it was really until maybe a year ago where I started to pay closer attention to like the print runs of these cards. And when everyone was grading it, it's like, holy crap, there's 35,000 base PSA 10s of these cards, that I started to get just totally turned off by it. And I just, the last 4 months, I've tried to take every dollar I can get out of my modern to put into vintage cards. It's a great way to enjoy the hobby, but it's a lot safer way to enjoy the hobby.
Yeah. So would you say your decision was monetarily driven, or was it that you truly like the vintage cards? Like or is it a combination of all of those? Tell me.
It's a combination. And I say vintage pretty loosely. Like I consider buying 25, 30-year-old cards vintage for a lot of guys. Like for me, that's vintage. It's not true vintage. I get it. But to go buy a Albert Pujols rookie from 2001, or, Derek Jeter rookies from 93 and Jordan's from 86. I mean, you're talking like you can't go buy wax packs and open those anymore. You have to go buy them graded. That's how I define vintage for some, new guys entering the hobby. So yeah, it's probably broader than your typical audience, but I think it's just, I was just tired of buying stuff and seeing it. It didn't matter how good a player did. Like they were issuing new shares of stock every day. You kept diluting the value of that card because there was just so much being issued. And so this is frustrating to see that.
And so many being graded and all of that true as well. But you've also, I want you to talk a little bit about your strategy, what you've been doing. You don't have to give away the keys to the castle here, but just what you've been finding, the type of person you've been talking to, because you've been uncovering these amazing, truly vintage collections, like not just pseudo vintage, but truly vintage stuff. How's that kind of working out for you? How's that been working?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I've said this before, but you put out your name a couple times and you work with a couple older guys and you do a deal and your name gets passed around. Then all of a sudden people know you as an honest dealer, an honest guy that's going to bring cash and treat people right. Like you get connected to people pretty quickly if you're that type of guy. And I started, when I moved up north here, I started just putting out feelers to see who was willing to sell collections. And it was kind of anything and everything. If you're willing to sell your collection, call me. I'll come over. I'll evaluate it with you, and we'll put a number on it, and then I'll pay you a fair price in cash. And cash is king, especially up here, right? Where you got guys that they care about silver, they care about guns, they care about tractors. So to take cardboard and to flip it into cash in a very easy way, it was a natural fit because building trust is a big part of who you and I are, right? Like being honest with people. And so it just kind of took off and more people kind of got connected with me and called me. Hey, I know this guy. You want to call this guy? He might be interested in selling his collection. Before long, I mean, I've probably talked to 70 people in the last 3 months and I've seen 30, 40 collections on site and being able to put evaluations together for people. And I mean, I can't express this enough. I can't believe the type of stuff that's sitting in people's attics, in barns, in attics inside of barns where you're like, how is this here? Like, if it's here, that means it's over there too, probably, right? And just you go drive 30 miles up a mountain road and you see these cards and you're like, gosh darn, the hobby is so rich. It's so deep. It's awesome to buy these cards and pay fair prices for them. But it's also awesome just to hear people talk about the stories behind them. It's just been so enlightening to me. It's actually made me fall in love with the hobby 100 times more than I ever was before.
That's awesome. And, I had a similar, I'm not out there looking for it like you are. And you're kind of getting your name out there, like you said, and trying to create this network of people so that you're kind of the guy to go to if somebody wants to unload a collection. But I've had times where I've had people, hey, I got a collection and ends up being a bunch of junk wax stuff that I have really no interest in. Or it's a collection like I had a couple of episodes about a barn, quote unquote, barn find, right? Wasn't found in a barn. People always criticize, this wasn't in a barn. Yeah, I know. I get it. Ty has found some collections in a barn. I have not. It's just a typical term for finding something that's previously unknown and undiscovered. That's a generic term for it, a barn find. And I found this, I had a friend approach me with his uncle's collection and, hey, what do I do with this? And looking at the cards and wowed, and there was a Mantle rookie and a Maze rookie and some really great cards. And ultimately I, helped that collection get sold to another dealer, a very reputable dealer. It's Mike up in MM7 Sports Cars in Oklahoma City. And, he paid a very fair price for it. Looking back on it, I should have just bought that. I should have bought that collection. I mean, it was $21,000, but he got the Mantle and the Maze graded to where that'll easily, in fact, way more than pay for all of the rest of the hundreds and hundreds of cards that were there, all of which were raw. But you're taking a risk with that. And that's what I think people, and I want you to talk about this because when you go to evaluate a collection, I have so many questions for you, Ty, that I want people to hear if they have these opportunities, what types of things they should be thinking about. The first of which is, where do you even start to value a collection? Because most likely they're all going to be raw. And if it's 50s and 60s cards, maybe some 70s cards, how do you go about evaluating that? Where do you start?
Yeah. Well, size matters in this case. You need, if it's 1,000,000 cards, right? You're not going to evaluate 1,000,000 cards, right? You have to approximate certain things. But the way I've done videos on this. So if anyone hasn't watched the 1.5 million card collection, I've been trying to put little tidbits of like, here's a lesson I've learned. Maybe this will help you at the beginning of the videos. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned is you got to ask people what they want for it. Like, you need to know where their head is first and foremost. Like, when I walk into a guy and he's got 50,000 cards, this is awesome. What do you want for this? Like, give me an idea of what you're expecting, because then you can work off of something. But ultimately, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are my top 20, top 30 cards, and what are those values? Because the rest of the stuff is time, and time is money, as you know, right? You can't be spending 150 hours the next month trying to go sell commons from vintage collections. You'll lose in the end. You have to know where your top is with your top 20 cards. So I try to quickly go through and figure out, okay, what does he have sleeved? What does he have top loaded? Where are the big cards? And come up with a number pretty quickly in my head of where the value is going to be. And then if it's really substantial, like I had a recent guy that came to me, and he had, 5,000 cards, and 4,000 of them were legitimately good cards that required me to go back a second day, video record the entire collection, and then put together an entire report for him with his top 200 cards. And that made sense for me to do, because I knew like it was worth my time to go buy these cards. So to answer your question, I try to figure out where the top 10, top 20, top 30 cards are, and then kind of base my price off of that and let the rest kind of be profit, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I keep going back to this one experience I had because it's kind of recent, and I sometimes kick myself for not buying that collection myself. It's a lot of money, and let's not kid anybody out here. If you're going to be doing this, you're not dropping $200. Like, if you're going to buy true vintage collections, you're going to end up paying, well into the thousands, potentially tens of thousands of dollars for these collections. And, I looked at it as my time, like how much time would I have to spend and how much risk am I taking? Because I don't know what these are going to, I think I know what they're going to grade. But as we said before, the famous line of Nolan Elite Co 3, spinning the wheel of PSA, right? And see what grade pops up. You never know what a card is going to, you don't know what a card is going to grade. You can think, I happen to be incredibly accurate in assessing the Mantle and the Maze, but in fact, I was exactly right on what I thought they would grade.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I wouldn't call it completely luck, but the point is, I didn't know that. That's what I thought they should grade. And they'd happen to grade that way. That could have been a different grader one day that it was terribly different. And so there's a lot of risk with that, a lot of expense with that, on top of the cost of the collection itself and time, right? How long is it going to take to get these graded? How long will they be at PSA, et cetera, et cetera? And you can't do that in this environment with every Tom, Dick, and Harry card that you have.
Yeah.
And so do you go, okay, looking at a collection, these are worth grading. I think I can do well on these if I grade them. Do you think, man, I want to recoup my investment? Because that's another thing I thought about. Sorry to talk so much, but I'm on a roll here. I thought, I want to keep a lot of this. Like, I wanted to keep 90% of it. Well, that's a lot of money to shell out to keep 90% of it. Now, knowing what I know now, I could have kept 90%. I could have kept all of it, sold 2 cards, and made my money back.
Yep.
And had all these other great cards essentially for free. But I didn't know that. I wasn't willing to take the risk to do that because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. Yep. How do you assess that risk? Do you think I got to get my money back as soon as possible? How does that work?
Well, I think my encouragement to anyone, first off, if you're going into this, you need to have a defined strategy. It's not like you need to know what you have an idea of what you're going to keep and maybe what not you're going to keep and kind of what you're going to hold long term. Like that doesn't work. It's a recipe for disaster, period. Right? It just is. You need to know that if you get Mickey Mantles and you want to keep them, then you're going to keep them, period. And these guys over here, you're going to sell. Like, know what you're going to keep. It just makes life a lot easier. That's one thing I've been trying to do really strictly, especially because my wife's like, you can't keep buying and not selling. You can't get attached to this stuff, right? At the end of the day, like, I get to see all of these incredible cards kind of come through my hands and build a collection on the side, but I can't get attached to this stuff because a lot of money's flowing in and out. That's the kind of mentality I'm trying to have, and then figure out what I'm going to collect. But when I'm looking at grading, like, for me, it's pretty simple. The big names I'm always going to grade. Like, and you've helped coach me through this a lot the last 6 months. There's certain guys you're going to grade. Mantle, you're going to likely send to PSA. You're even going to pay the $150 in most cases right now to grade Mantle. SGC is a pretty darn good option for just about every other vintage card out there. It just is. Unless it's going to get a 7 or above, SGC is an incredibly fair comp to PSA in the vintage world.
Yeah, I think it's very different than modern cards for sure, don't you think?
It's extremely different. Yeah. And the other thing is, like, when there is modern cards involved, the days of sending every, Dick and Jane Mary card in they're gone. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. So you can't have the mentality like, I'm just going to grade all this stuff and make money. It doesn't work that way anymore. Right. You have to actually find good stuff to grade, or you're going to lose money really quickly.
For sure. And again, we're different. You and I are so different in a good way, in good ways, but we're also very similar. We're both collectors. I'm not a seller. The idea of buying cards just to resell them, I get this all the time. Well, Mike, why don't you just go buy vintage cards and use that money to buy other vintage, sell it. And again, it's that whole time thing. Like, man, I got plenty of other stuff in my life that I want to do. And sitting around doing that, I'd rather just go out and earn more. I'd rather work more, earn more money, and then buy the cards I actually want instead of, you know what I mean? It's just questioning of what you want to do with your time. But what have you decided? You just mentioned keeping stuff and wanting to build a collection. And it's funny that people don't know how much we talk offline, which we do a lot. And they're great conversations, because I'm seeing you get excited about vintage in a way that makes my heart just sing, because you're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This card and da 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 da. And what are you keeping? What have you decided that you're going to start keeping and building a collection of?
Yeah, well, I've got the entire Mantle run now, except for the 52 and the 53.
I thought you did have 53.
Oh, I just got the 53, but I'm going to resub that, so I can't show it. I wanted to show it tonight, but yeah, I'm going to keep the Mantle run. I obviously keep all Royal stuff. So George Brett, we're still working on the entire, Topps run of George Brett. Key rookies, the Nolan Ryans, the Pete Roses, all that stuff that I'm able to acquire now. It's like, it's in my collection. Doubles I will sell, but a lot of that stuff it appreciates nearly every year anyway. So there's no reason to rush and sell it.
That's interesting, because with these collections also, you are picking up multiple. Like, how many Ryan rookies have you had pass through your hands in the last
4 in the last 6 weeks?
And you didn't have any before, right?
Right.
And are you going to keep one of those for your collection?
I am. Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So you're recognizing key cards. Obviously, we're having a lot of conversation like, hey, is this card worth keeping or grading, or yes, no, maybe? We have a lot of those conversations about certain things. And I love that you're going, that is a great way to do it. If you can find multiple, I would sell doubles too. Like, honestly, if I had multiples of all these cards, that's a great thing about this other collection. If I should have bought it for a whole lot of reasons, one of which also is I already have a Mantle and a Mays rookie. So the 2 key cards in that collection I could have resold. Or maybe like one of them the Mays came back a 4.5. I have a 2. So maybe I keep the 4 and sell the 2 to recoup some of my money. The Mantle was a 3.5. So I sell that. I already have a 5. You know what I mean? That makes sense to me. I still didn't do it, but whatever.
You're really bitter about that. I love that. You brought it up 4 times.
It's not bitter, it's regret. And it's not a major regret. It's not like something I lose any sleep over, but it's like opportunity missed.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is taking advantage of those opportunities to build a collection, to be able to resell things. Do you typically go in? You mentioned asking them for, like, tell me a price, right?
Yeah.
And what's
Yeah.
funny is some people have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
Others think it's worth, $2 million, some crazy number that's certainly not realistic either. How do you get to, you said you evaluate it yourself, and
Yeah.
that jumping off point, have you had to have those difficult conversations of either, hey, you're way too high,
Yeah.
or do you go to people and say, hey, you're really underselling yourself here. This is worth way more than you
Mhm.
think. Because you can't look, we have, we're both followers of Jesus Christ. And so we have a thing that we think about more than just what people think about us, right? We have a standard that's higher than anything in our society today. And so, not that we're trying to be self-righteous or saying they're perfect, we're far from it. I think we would both agree with that. But I think about, I use the word karma in the world, or whatever you want to use. I think about how that has to play out. And so fair matters.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah. I've had to do both. And I always tell people this, and I truly do mean this. When I'm figuring out the price of your cards, like, I want to come to a price that's going to cause me to lose 0 sleep tonight. Like, I want 0 guilt because I want to have peaceful sleep. Like, that's a big deal to me, because I to your point, like, we're held accountable to a higher standard, and I want to walk away from that deal, good or bad, knowing that I treated that person right. But yeah, I've had first off, take a step back. The question always comes up, and I've had this people email me like, hey, I can't get a price out of somebody. There's an art to that, right? And maybe it's because you and I have been in this world, sales world, long enough. There's a way to get that out of somebody. And a good way to do that is to approach it with, because you're right, a lot of people don't know their prices, but you need to understand where their head is. So saying, hey, this is an awesome collection. Are you thinking like $1,000? You thinking like $50,000? Like, where's your head at with this number? Even something as simple as that will get them to talk about what they're actually thinking. That's it. That's all you want to do. Because if they're thinking $50,000 and you know it's worth 2,000, you're probably not going to come to a deal anyway. You want to get that out on the table now. So that's quick word of advice. And you would probably agree with that, I'm guessing.
Totally
That's a
agree.
good tip. Just be real with people, right? But yeah, it's not fun telling somebody like, hey, 90% of what you have here is junk wax. And I know you love it. I know they're all great players that you want to talk about, the Griffeys, the Frank Thomases, but they're just not worth anything, unfortunately. It's not a fun conversation. Or to tell people that certain things they have aren't real. Like, I'm about to tell 2 people that they have fake Jordan rookies. That isn't fun.
No.
Especially when they bought it 5 years ago for a decent price.
Yeah, and you don't gain anything by blowing smoke up people's butts. I've always thought that in life, just in period, that just be real. And it may or may not work out. You said, how many deals have you had to walk away from? Of the 70 plus collections you've looked at, like you said, over the last 6 months?
50 plus I've walked away from.
Out of the 70?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've only completed probably 20 deals this last year. And like, I try to go all in for the big deals. But again, I can't say this enough. You have to protect your time. Like, if you're going to swing at something, you want to make sure it's worth your time, because once you go in on something and it's not worth your time and you have to like spend the next 6 months recouping your loss, you miss out on everything else for the next 6 months. So it's important. It's important to protect that.
What's your favorite card or collection that you've found in this period that you've been doing this?
There's 2 that come to mind. One was the Mantle Collection. That was a big one. And it's a great guy I stay in contact with. In fact, he's called me up multiple times. I've gone back to his house because he's found more stuff. And I'm just consigning it for him, basically, just to help him out. Like, hey, he found a basically complete set of Desert Storm Topps cards, the Operation Shield. And so I'm just like, let me consign these for you, and I'll take 20% and you take the 80%. I'll just help you out, get more cash. But the Mantle Collection was great. A lot of those are still at SGC getting graded. I had one a couple weeks ago that I didn't even get the chance to look at really, but it was from a brother of his that died. And it was a really sad death. And it was just a sad story to hear. And and even talking about it, you could just tell like it was emotionally taxing to have the cards out of his attic out there in front of him, reminding him of the way his brother died. And the guy's mid-70s, right? So it's been around for a long time.
Right.
But it was pouring out in rain, like, and I didn't know what he had, but I knew it was good enough for me to make a fair offer. So I'm like, I'll give you X thousands of dollars for this. And he's like, really? And I was like, I'm taking a little bit of a chance here, but I think there's some good stuff based on what you told me. And my truck ends up getting stuck. I had to get it towed out because of the rain on the side of a mountain. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh Lord, what did I do here? Like, was that a sign? Like I was just not I wasn't handling this the right way. And so we get home that night. My son was with me. We get home that night and we unpack the cards and we start looking at them really for the first time. And I think I showed some of you in a recent video, right? There was multiple Pujols rookies. There was some stuff that some of it was not in great condition, but there was some graded Jeter stuff. There was some graded Pujols stuff. There was some Topps Tiffany stuff. And I actually went back to the guy and I said, I wrote him a note and I said, I want to give you more money for this because there was actually better stuff in here than I thought. And I told him this before I left that I would do this to him. And he said, no, I don't even want it. Like you already blessed me enough. Like I thank you for doing, like you treated me fair. Like you don't need to pay me more. And it was one of those, like you treat people right and people appreciate it. Even if you want to go above and beyond, it's like they feel it. And it was just an incredible thing. And I'm still going through cards and pulling out like, Mark McGwire refractors from 90, 97 and all these like cards that are just awesome stuff. So anyway, that was a long story. Sorry.
No, it's a great story. But it's a great lesson for people to hear. If you go out and find a collection, just be fair, just be honest. I mean, I get it that you need to make a buck too and tie your time's worth. Everybody's time has different value to it. They put their own, you value your time. Everybody values it differently. But at the same time, you've got to treat people right. And there's the day of reckoning is coming for all of us. We all got to be, like you said, got to be able to sleep well. That's important. And so I've had that happen in life and not necessarily in cardboard, but it works.
Well, I'll just say this. It was a great lesson to teach your own son, right? Like I had my son ask me like, why would you, cause we're talking about it on the drive home. Like, why would you pay him more for it? He agreed to a price. And it's like, well, there's an opportunity to do a good thing. There's an opportunity to go above and beyond and do a great thing for somebody. And it's a great lesson to be able to go through with your kids. If you do in fact, exactly that.
I'll tell a funny story. My kids were little. They were, 8 and 10, something like that. And one Christmas, speaking, because it's, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, all this stuff's going on right now. We're in Christmas season. And I went to Walmart and I bought a bunch of stuff. I bought an Xbox or something. It was like $500 or $600 worth of stuff that I bought on Black Friday. And I'd gone to the checkout. And one of the things, some of them will have like a time they're good for. It's good only after from 7 or whatever. Well, it wasn't on sale yet. So I said, I'll just take that off then. Well, they ended up wiping the order completely. And I went home. I had a receipt and I went home because they had run it and it screwed it all up. It never showed up on my credit card. Like days later, I'm looking and I'm like, where is this purchase? It's not there. I took my kids. I went back to Walmart and I went up to the desk and I said, hey, here's the receipt of the things I took home with me that you guys never really charged me for. You erased the transaction like it never happened.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe it. They thought I was absolutely bonkers for coming back there and asking that, no, you need to charge my card. I bought these items. I need to pay for them. It was a great lesson to teach my kids, and hopefully everybody out there would do that. They said they've never seen anyone do that. They couldn't believe it. The lady to go get a manager, like, I don't even know what to do. No one's ever done this before. But again, you just be fair.
Yeah.
Sorry, that had nothing to do with sports cards, but
No, that's a good story. That's a good story.
it's true. And as
I,
you're,
w-
go ahead.
I was going to say, I will say this, you're going to fail in a lot of these too. Like you're going to make mistakes in the collections you buy, and it's not going to be, it's just going to require practice. Like for those that haven't bought collections before and you go write a $5,000 check, like you're going to make some mistakes and it's going to require more time than you thought. And you're going to just have to learn through it. There's been a few I bought and I'm like, gosh, darn it. I didn't handle it the right way. I lost time. Just bad decision. Period.
Yeah. I hope people don't walk away, or having you say that is important, because it's not always perfect. It doesn't always go, well, I'm always going to make money in this. That's just not always true. And, so as you've been doing this for this period of time, is it something you go, I want to keep doing this? Or are you going, I've had enough?
Yeah, I mean, you get a certain amount of inventory where you can only handle so much, right? Yeah, I mean, it's grown enough to where there's a lot of good things that have come out of this, and I would probably keep doing it. I don't know how much more there is up here. I say that I just don't know. I just don't know how much is up here, but there's a lot of great stories we want to tell. We want to tell them on Bench Clear, and so we're working on ways to help people offload collections to us and get a fair price for it, and also be able to tell the story behind those cards. So, yeah, I
What's
think
the
we did.
furthest you've traveled for a collection?
So we traveled about 11 hours for the 1.5 million cards. We traveled about 11 and a half hours round trip for that one. And that required a 16-foot U-Haul to get all the cards, which I'm still probably a third of the way through those boxes. It's just so, even if you know what you're doing, I don't think people realize the their grandiose time suck that going through 5,000 count boxes is, especially unsorted boxes. It's just so time consuming. People do know because they're watching this stuff. They know how time consuming it is.
Does that lead you? And again, this is my nightmare. I go, oh my gosh, it'd be great, but it's a lot of time. Do you have any regrets?
No regrets at all. Yeah. I've heard stories twice from people who, I bought a collection from a guy who his kids unloaded the collection after the dad basically got so sick and was in the hospital. They unloaded the collection because their dad spent 20 years of his life building this collection and never spent time with them. And so with the first opportunity they had, they sold this collection because they despised the cards because it ruined their opportunity to get to know their dad. So that was a massive lesson for me in knowing that whenever I get these cards in, if I can't enjoy them with my kids, again, there's business side of this too. You have to be able to get it done. But if I can't have my kids enjoy it with me, then it's not worth any of it. It's just not worth it. I'd rather not do it at all.
Yeah.
I was glad I ran into that guy because I could have easily got sucked into that whole, like, let's get millions of cards. Let's work this nonstop. And before long, I'm not even spending time with my kids. So that's not going to happen to me.
It's hard to balance hobby. And I deal with that, between eBay looking, just looking through your collection, just, buying stuff, spending money. That some people spend money they don't have, really don't spend money they can't afford. There's always an opportunity cost with every choice we make, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're doing one thing, you can't be doing something else. You can't spend the same hour everywhere. And I've had my kids tell me sometimes, hey, we think you love your cards more than you love us, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that is hard to hear. Obviously, that's not true. I would sell everything I own in a heartbeat if I needed to for my kids or for my family, and wouldn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
But it's made me this time period that I'm going to go through here where I'm not buying cards, like last week was great, just with my family during Thanksgiving and not thinking about the hobby, not really involved in the hobby at all, was refreshing and
Yeah.
nice. And to take breaks, and it should be something you try. You're going through all these collections that you've been picking up and
Yeah.
sweating and doing different things. And this, I'm just going to say it for everyone else out there, but take breaks and take time for yourself. Take time for the things that really matter in life. And cardboard, this is supposed to be fun,
Exactly.
And do you worry doing this will sour your love of the hobby just overall because you'll spend so much time doing it, or it just becomes a business for you?
Well, I think if this was my second year in this, I would say, yeah, maybe. But I mean, look, this, I've been doing this for 20 something years. It's like, it's in my blood. Like I truly do love the sports card hobby. It's one of those passions that I don't think will ever go away, period. So no, I don't think it will. It's just a matter of controlling that. And I guess to round out your thought, I do think if there is dads watching, if there's moms watching, I think it's a fair question to ask yourself and even ask your kids, like, what do they think about your cards? If you were to ask them, hey, what do you think about me collecting or my cards? What would you say about that? Like their answers, like you'd be surprised with what they'd say. Cause I've asked my kids that too. And it's like, it's a really good heat check on like your mentality. Cause it's, you don't want to get too far down the path when you're 25 years old and you're like, gosh, dang it. I did not ask that when I should have 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So anyway,
We're doing a lot of deep conversation. We're adding a lot of deep nuggets here during this episode. This is,
cards bring that out in you though, right? I mean, and I think that's the thing that's really stuck out to me in all these endeavors is like, there is some serious stories behind these cards. Like these cards went through some serious stuff in people's lives. They got people through things. They were a vice for people. They inhibited them from like building relationships. These cards, man, like good and bad, have crazy stories, and you want them to tell good stories in your life. I guess is my point.
For sure. When you think about picking up these collections and doing this, again, if there are people out there that either A, haven't thought about it, or B, are thinking about it, how does it work? What are some final as we kind of wrap up here, some other tips and tricks that you might give to people, especially on the vintage side? What should they be looking for?
Yeah. So a couple things that I've learned the hard way. One, when you put out an ad, you can scour Craigslist. I wouldn't recommend. I don't find a lot of good stuff on Craigslist, but when you put out an ad or you go search the classifieds, your time is valuable. You want to have people send you pictures for one. You want to have people tell you what are the good cards and collections. I would say make sure you do that all the time. Like ask for pictures, ask for descriptions, call them on the phone, talk to them, hear the story behind the card, go see them. Because I've been in a couple of situations that if I were to ask qualifying questions, it would not have been awkward. And there was a couple that were kind of scary to be in that I should have never been in. I would say the newspaper is a good thing. Like the newspaper is a really good thing. Like use that to your advantage. People still read the newspaper, and you think about the demographic that reads the newspaper. That's all I'm going to say, right? Those are the people that you want to be buying vintage cards from. So take advantage of that. And remember, those people don't use email very often. They don't text. You have to pick up the phone and you have to call them and you have to talk to them and build a relationship with them, or they will never sell to you. They would rather die than sell to you. In a lot of those cases, you have to build the bridge. So that's on you, right? That's on you to be the expert and to be the person to build the relationship. And I think you'd be surprised with how rewarding it is to do that, regardless of whether you come out with a deal or not.
So I'll throw out something there. We've danced around this and even maybe talked about points of it directly, but the idea of you need to count the total cost of what that's going to be. Not just the cost of the cards themselves, but the cost of grading, the cost of sorting and time and all these different things and listing and fees you're going to have to pay if you sell on eBay or wherever. You're going to lose some of that money back to PayPal or eBay or whatever. Just think about the total cost. If you buy a card for 100, but at the end of the day, you only get $80, that's not a good trade. That's not a good trade for your time. So kind of encompassing that entire process is, I think, really important. And you and I have had conversations about this a lot. Well, yeah, that's a good deal for the raw card, but oh, by the way, you're going to want to grade it and this and this and this. And, it's just a good reminder to always think through the entirety of the process, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think to that point too, you want to be careful. You don't want to overeducate somebody, right? Because it just does nobody good, right? And what are you going to do with your card? Well, I'm going to go grade it, and then I'm going to sell it for this. I think it's going to grade a PSA 6, and it's going to sell for that. You're buying a raw card in that instance, right? Pay a fair price for the raw card. You don't have to overthink this in many cases. The reward for you to grade, that's your upside, right? Like, so don't overeducate somebody, but at the same time, it's so easy to overgrade cards in your mind. I cannot tell you how many times I thought that is a PSA 6, so therefore it's worth this much. I'm going to value it at this much. Don't do that, because you're going to be frustrated so quick when you don't get the grade you want on vintage cards, and the dollar swings so fast, as you know, Mike. Like, they swing thousands of dollars between PSA 4s and 6s and 7s, and you're not as good as you think when it comes to evaluating cards. You're just not. No one's Nolan from Elite Co.
Right.
Or Mike, the baseball collector.
Well, no, but that takes time to truly, if you're doing a quick cursory look at all these cards, like my first look at that other collection that I was talking about, I valued them way higher than once I got them back a second time, when I was able to spend a lot more time looking at them and seeing the wrinkles that I missed before and the rounded corners and all the issues with the cards. I went, whoa, maybe these aren't as valuable as I initially thought. And that would be another tip, is don't get overly enthusiastic initially, like just because of what it is. It's a Ruth or a Mantle or a Clemente rookie, or cool your jets, just be realistic with yourself. And like you said, you're never as good as, especially at the first look, the first glance. It's always with rose colored glasses, I think. And we miss so much stuff that had we just taken, but you can't take this. That's the thing. You got to weigh this. Look, I need to take time on this, but I can't because I'm trying to do a deal.
Yeah.
So
it's an art. It is an art. There's no spreadsheet that can solve the problem for you. There's just not. Right. Yeah. And like, we didn't even talk about this. Maybe it's another episode, but there's a lot of people out there that you think they're sweet and kind, but they know what they're doing and they know what they're selling. And you're going to get scammed a few times. I can promise. Are you going to get in a situation where you could get scammed by people that are passing on counterfeit stuff or stuff that they've already tried to grade? Like, you're going to get that. It's a dirty hobby too. There's a dark side of the hobby. It's not all roses.
Yeah. Let's stay positive though. Let's try to stay positive.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Ty, for being on the show with me today. I appreciate it. This has been a long time coming. I mean, trying to pin you down on your schedule is very difficult. I've been trying for, a year and a half to get you on the show. So
yeah. Thanks for having me.
No, it's just because you finally came over from the dark side of modern over to the wonderful, wonderful world of vintage, and you're seeing what all the glory is all about, right?
There's a lot of great modern stuff too.
Yeah, but you just gotta love an old baseball card. There's something about it.
Do you like this guy here? Is this one of your guys?
Ooh, that is. I think that needs to go in my package. Is that a gold?
No, it's not. It's the red.
Okay, so that's the base of that card, by the way.
Is it?
It's the red. Yeah.
The base was numbered to 50.
Mm-hmm.
Out of certified.
On Ryan, it was.
Okay.
The base is silver. The base is silver. No, I don't have that either. 53 tops, man.
Gosh. Okay.
Don't have that.
Too bad you can't buy stuff right now.
You've been getting great stuff. It's been fun to go through the journey with you as you've been doing that.
I owe you a lot because of this vintage love. Would Julie make an exception for you to buy something from me? Oh, she did already. She made the exception for this is the Ichiro. Never mind.
Yeah, buddy. Which I'm still waiting for, by the way. Don't know where that is in the mail, but hey, whatever.
Whatever. All right.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Thanks for listening on the podcast. If you're out there, go leave a comment, a review on Apple Podcasts or something that really helps the show. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And thanks for putting up with me not being here last week for Thanksgiving. We'll catch you guys soon. Keep collecting.
Yeah.